All right, now I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Paletti. You're going to do a much better job explaining this than I am. So, will you please welcome Ms. Paletti?
I invited some friends of mine to Harbor to talk about something special we did on March 7th. And this is Amy. She'll be doing most of the presentation to explain about what we did. So, yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Dr. Amy Cott. You can call me Dr. Amy. You know Ms. Paletti. That's Bill Burns. It's Jonathan DeHaan. And we have a friend Paul who came and kept this company. And thank you for having us. And we're here to tell you about something cool we did back on March 7th. Now, when we were your age, there were 2 space programs in the world. There was the one in the United States. That was mostly in Cape Canaveral, Florida, a few other places. And there was the one in the USSR, in Baikonur, Soviet Union. But nowadays, things have changed. Now, Long Island has its own space program. And Island Labs is part of it, and we're here to tell you about it. Well, with our first space shot, what we wanted to do was set up some goals. We wanted to take a camera and successfully launch it into an area known as near space, about 20 miles up. We wanted to take some pictures from this area. And naturally, we didn't want to just take pictures. We wanted to be able to look at the pictures, so we had to be able to recover the camera itself, naturally. Now, why did we want to do this? Well, we first heard about a group in Massachusetts, some students from MIT had done this, and we said, hey, you know, that sounds really cool. Let's see if we can do that too. Naturally, we also want to represent Long Island. I mean, Long Island has a very long, proud history in aerospace. And finally, it just sounded awesome. We just wanted to do it because it sounds so cool. Go Dora. So when we designed our first spacecraft, each spacecraft had to be made up of lots of little systems, each system taking over a certain part of the mission. So we had one system for providing lift. We had to design another one to take pictures continuously, since we wouldn't be able to control it from the ground. This was our first launch, our first craft. It had to be able to do it on its own. We had to have a way to protect our payload that was going up. We also had we had to have a way for it to land safely. And naturally, we had to have a way to find it, because going 20 miles up, it was going to be too far for us to follow by eye, and so we had to be able to locate it afterwards. Now, that's not all. There were some other considerations we had to take into account as well. Now, when you get to maximum altitude, like about 20 miles up, it gets really cold. Do you know how cold it gets up there? All right. I'm sorry? Yeah, you.
Below 0?
Below 0, as a matter of fact, it goes to about -60 below. That's like a really, really cold day on the South Pole in winter. So whatever we sent up, we had to make sure it could withstand the cold. That was particularly important with the batteries, because batteries, when it gets too cold, they stop working. Then you can't run your camera. Now, as you go up, the higher you go, air pressure gets less and less and less. So whatever we sent up had to make sure that it could take care of that. And it gets windy up there. So naturally, everything had to be cushioned and everything had to be strapped down so it didn't get knocked around too much. And there were weight limits. The United States government has a branch called the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, and they control commercial and civil aviation, you know, airplanes that we fly on. And they have rules about how much weight you can send up on a balloon, and the limit is 4 pounds. So we had to keep everything well below 4 pounds. As a matter of fact, I think we kept it down to about 2 pounds, I think. About 2 pounds, yeah. And because this is our first flight, it was going to be a very simple craft, we wouldn't be able to control it. So we had to, whatever it had to do it automatically on its own. And also there's UV radiation. Now UV stands for ultraviolet. That's part of this sunlight that we get that causes you to tan, or in this poor guy's case, burn. Now, did everybody get a bracelet?
Yeah.
Okay. Paul, can you help me out here? If you didn't get a bracelet, put up your hand, and Paul will give you a bracelet.
Which doesn't.
And if there's left over, Dogs can get you too. Now, the beads in your bracelet, they're white now, but if you go out in sunlight, they turn colors. That's because the beads are sensitive to ultraviolet radiation. We'll tell you more about that at the end of the talk. But whatever we sent up had to make sure that it could withstand UV radiation.
The ones on the...
Okay. And finally, we had to make sure we kept the cost down. None of us is a branch of the government. We had to keep the cost down. So, we had our system. So what did we design to take care of the various parts of the system? Well, for lift, well, we couldn't afford to use a very expensive, fancy rocket, so we used a helium balloon. It's worked for the weather service for years. Helium works well because it's a gas that weighs less than air. It's a lighter than air gas. And to take pictures continuously, we used a digital camera. As a matter of fact, we used our camera, and it behaved very nicely. And we modified it so that it would take pictures continuously. Like every 5 seconds, it would take a picture, take another picture, take another picture. Whoops. Let's try it again. That. Let's try that. Now, to protect our payload, we used a styrofoam ruler. It is very good because it doesn't cost very much. It's very lightweight, and it protects against ultraviolet radiation, and it helps keep the heat in. And to land safely, well, skydivers have been using parachutes for decades. Works for us. Very simple technique, and it works. And finally, a way to find it? Well, we use the cell phone to locate our payload. So, when we put our craft together, this is basically how it ended up looking. For lift, we had our balloon, and it looked kind of like that. We had a parachute hanging directly underneath, so we didn't have to deploy it. It was already open when we launched. And our picnic cooler served as our capsule, and that's what we kept all of our electronics in. Now, if we looked inside the capsule, here's what our payload was. There's the camera we set up. We strapped it to some packing material so it wouldn't get jostled around. This is the cell phone we used for tracking. We got that from eBay for what, $20 or something like that, very inexpensively. And remember we talked about it getting very cold up there? Well, we managed to keep things warm by using disposable hand warmers like Jonathan's holding up right now. They're very inexpensive, they're very lightweight, you don't have to worry about them getting too hot, and they get the job done. And of course, what good is a space flight unless you send passengers? Now, what with the temperature and lack of air and so forth, we couldn't send anything living up. I mean, you couldn't even send up a bug. But we had a nice little plastic shark. That was our little astronaut. We sent that up because the shark is our logo because of a comic strip we had seen with a shark on a balloon. And we chose a shark. And of course, there's a capsule to hold it all. And that's what it looked like just before launch. All nicely taped shut with lots of colorful duct tape. And that's actually it right now.